I can tell one story because, I don't talk about, I try not to talk about relationship with Elon that often because, he's so famous now.
Yeah,
I mean, when we met,
figure this-
I used to go out to parties with him and people are like, oh my God, you're Jason Calacanis. I was like, yeah. And like, who's your friend? I'm like, that's my friend Elon. And they'd be like, what? He's doing rocket ships? But he's told this story publicly, so I can tell it. I would never talk about anything that he hasn't already talked about publicly, especially since he's so high profile, but it was a pretty funny moment. There was a moment in time when Tesla almost went out of business, and you've probably heard the story many times, but it was during the financial crisis, and they were running out of money. And I said, let's go get a steak. And we're in LA, and we drove to Boa, and I had my orange Tesla Roadster, and he had his P1 or P2, like the red one that I think is in space now. And we drove to the valet, and we had a steak together, and we're sitting there. And I said, I read the story in Gawker or whatever, and New York Times, you only got like 5 weeks of money left in Tesla. He goes, it's not true. I was like, oh, thank God. And he goes, we have 2 weeks. I was like, oh God. I was like, well, what's going on with the rocket ship company?
Yeah.
I know you did the one last month, and don't you have one coming up? He's like, yeah, we got the third one coming up. I was like, well, how's that going? He said, well, we blow that one up. There's no more SpaceX. I was like, so 2 weeks of money left in Tesla, and SpaceX, you blew up the first 2 rockets, you blew up the third, SpaceX is over. He's like, yeah. I was like, I can loan you a couple $1 million. I don't have like a ton. He's like, it's okay. Our friend Beep has loaned me some money. And Elon's been super public about this. I would never tell the story unless he hadn't been, but he was talking, he never said who it was, but somebody had loaned him money to keep him afloat. He was functionally bankrupt. Yeah. I mean, he had the equity in the companies, but the equity was quickly becoming worth zero, and the financial crisis, and he's figuring out if he's going to go on vacation for Christmas or not, and he's on the phone trying to, save both companies. And I said, certainly there must be some good news. And he takes out his BlackBerry to date this conversation. There are no iPhones. Takes out his BlackBerry and he starts swiping, and he says, don't tell anybody. This is what I'm building. And he shows me the Model S. And nobody knew that he was working on the Model S. We knew he was doing the Roadster and was trying to save the company. And I looked at it and I was like, that's gorgeous. It was the clay models. So it was a full-size clay model. So there's human beings standing around a clay version of this tiny little BlackBerry picture. I'm scrolling through on remember that little pad or the ball on the BlackBerry? I'm scrolling through it. I'm like, this is fucking great. And I just said to him, I was like, what's the range going to be? He says, well, I think we get 250 miles. I was like, 250 miles? He's like, yeah, I think it'll be the safest car ever. I said, what is it going to cost? He says, I think this could cost eventually $50,000, $60,000. I said, Elon, if you make that car, you'll change the goddamn world. You have to, this company must survive, because the Roadster's for like 2,000 people in the United States. This car is for every person in the United States. Every single person in the United States will want this car if it's $50,000. Yeah. And maybe some of the people who have $20,000 or $30,000 cars won't be able to afford it, but they'll all want it. Mm-hmm. It's gorgeous. And he said, you really think so? I said, yeah. So I got home and I talked to my wife, Jade, and I said, do you have the checkbook? She does all the finances and stuff like that, pays every the bills and whatever. And I said, yeah, don't tell anybody Elon's making this great car. And I wrote 2 checks for $50,000. And I just took out a piece of paper and I wrote E, comma, love the new car. I'll take 2. And I signed it. I kissed the 2 $50,000 checks, put them in the envelope, and I FedExed it to him for Monday delivery. And I said to Jade, that $100,000 is going to be gone in 48 hours because it will pay for 1 or 2 days of payroll on Tesla. So we just added, like, instead of 2 weeks in a row, he's got 12 days.
Yeah.
And the checks don't cash. But then I read a story that he's closed the money, saved the company in like the next week or 2. And a couple of months later, the checks get cashed. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. 3 years later, I get an email. Your reservation number, it's from Tesla. Yeah. Your reservation number is 000000001. And then 5 seconds later, your reservation number is 0000073. And I forwarded the number 1 to Elon. And I said, I can't take number 1, a signature number 1. I can't take that. That's yours. Yeah. And he's like, oh, I got 5 of them. And besides, you're the first person who ordered it. And I was the first person who had seen
You're
it.
gonna get me to be teary-eyed.
And then
that's
no, it was a very,
that's a beautiful moment.
It was an incredible moment for
beautiful.
both of us. And we talk about it sometimes, those moments in time. And when you, to your point about love,
That's
and Elon,
like the darkest moment, one of the darkest moments in his life, probably.
I think it was, I can tell you it was the darkest period of his life for sure.
Yeah.
And he's been very public about how dark that was. And I think, this is why I have great sympathy for the entrepreneurs of the world, like the suffering and the pain. And when he talks about the suffering and the pain that all of these founders have felt, and then we're throwing rocks at them and we're criticizing them as they try to change the world and save humanity. And in Tesla's case, I mean, they weren't, they weren't like delivering pizza. I mean, they were trying to get us off of fossil fuels. Like this was a big, heady mission to literally save the environment, the planet, humanity. And the way they shorted that stock and they attacked him, it was always perplexing to me why any human being who is standing on God's green earth would want to throw rocks at the guy who is trying to stem the dam of global warming that is about to engulf all of us. How dare they throw rocks at that guy?
Yeah.
There's so many people you could throw rocks at. There's somebody who's making the Juul vaporizer. Throw rocks at that scumbag. No offense. But like whoever's making the Juul things and is, selling pina colada flavor to 12-year-olds, like throw rocks at them. Somebody's doing something, abhorrent, but not E. I mean, and anyway, that car is, up the road here, sitting under a cover with 20,000 miles on it in my garage. And then the Roadster number 16 is in the garage next to it. And every day I walk by the two of them and I get a warm feeling in my heart because I know E did it.
Yeah.
Against all odds, he pulled it off. And it was that moment, that month in that 2000, I think it was probably December of 2008, I think. It's just 12 years ago when you think about it, 13 years ago. It was dark. I mean, it was dark. And they almost had the same thing happen, in the Model 3 production in June of 3 years ago. And I remember him just trying to get the Model 3 out the door, and the company almost crashed then.